Good one, yes. Now, sorry about that little delay. So, let's take a look at the codes. And again, I'm just going to interpret the code a little bit for you. If there's a huge code question, I'm going to set you guys upon each other. I'm not here to interpret 100% of everything. I'll tell you what everybody in the nation does, what their general activity is related to this, and then you guys can work with each other and work out some policies. But let's talk about the only code that we're working with. The International Fire Code is very clear. Testing and certification, any fire escape system found in a state of deterioration or unsafe shall be repaired immediately. Is that standard for you guys? And then it says, depending upon structural condition, a load test may be conducted. Depending on structural condition. Who determines what depending on structural condition is? Is it the structural engineer, or is it you that needs to be convinced of the structural condition? So if you're the inspector and the structural engineer, the architect, whoever chooses not to, tell you what you need to know, and you don't have confidence in what you're getting as a document, can you order a load test?
Yeah.
Who said so?
Yeah.
The International Fire Code. The NFPA says it best. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to approve any fire escape system that has been shown by a load test. So they don't even go to satisfactory condition first. They go, give me a load test. Then they say, or there's evidence to have adequate strength. So the NFPA says, load test is the only way to go. These things are 75 plus years old. You give me other evidence of strength, then I will forego the load test. But everything in your mind, day one, fire escape's coming down your path, what's automatically for it? Until what does the structural engineer have to do to you? Give you overwhelming information that tells you that he doesn't want to waste the money on the load test. Because does load test buy any paint? Does load test buy any bolts? Does it put 5 to 10 guys working for a whole day or 2 days or 3 days moving sandbags around? Yeah. And are they putting themselves at risk? Thank you. And the International Building Code, testing and certification. All exterior fire escape systems shall be examined. That means you want to report. And or tested, which means load tested. And or certified for structural adequacy and safety. Isn't that other evidence of strength? So 3 codes. So can a building official, fire official order a load test? Can a building official order a load test? Can and if anything is related to the NFPA, can that be a trigger for a load test? 3 codes. Let's see if we have any more codes out there. You guys got your materials and strength. That's you guys, right? And it says the fire official is authorized to require testing or other satisfactory evidence that an existing fire escape stair meets the requirements of this section. So is testing load testing? And is satisfactory evidence, are we going to now use a terminology today called certification, and we're going to try to describe what should be certification, and if everybody agrees what certification is, you're going to not have to do a load test. Otherwise, if you don't ever see a good certification, if you've never been convinced of certification, what are you always going to throw down every time you run across a fire escape? Load test. And then you got the maintenance says you got to keep it painted, right? And everybody's painting their fire escapes, right? So you got 2 codes. You got the code that says you must keep it painted. So can you walk up to a rusty fire escape and just fail it right there? And then order one immediately. Now, can you just load test a fire escape as is? Can I load test this exactly the way it is? I can. Must pass a confidence test. Why would I load test and I know something's going to break? You know what these things look like when they fall down full of people? So can I ever load test a fire escape that has not passed a confidence test? No. So if all of a sudden somebody's got a rotten piece of steel on the side of the building and goes, oh, you want a load test? I'm ordering a load test. No, you must repair it, then you can load test. No, I'm ordering a load test right away. What do you tell that guy? Not authorizing it. Right, because it's just you're gonna rip it to the ground. It's just gonna fall to the ground, and you got evidence of rust in all the connections. You got original hardware. You got huge holes as we pass. If I load tested one of these fire escapes, as the guy's putting the last 50-pound bag on there, what happens? He goes with it. So take a look at another guy that says, this is OSHA. Exit routes must be maintained during construction, repairs, and alterations. This is a fairly new find. See what it says. During new construction, employees must not occupy a workplace until the exit routes are required by this subpart are completed and ready for employee use for the portion of the workplace they occupy. So that's for new construction. So if I got a building and they haven't put up the fire escape yet on this new building and they haven't occupied the building yet, can they occupy that building before I put the fire escape up? This brand new fire escape. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Now read this one. During alterations and repairs with, gutting a building, employees must not occupy any workplace unless the exit routes required by this subpart are available and the existing fire protection are maintained, or until alternate fire protection is furnished that provides an equivalent level of safety. Does that translate into all second means of egress must be certified or load tested before any work permits can be issued for an existing structure and somebody's gutting a building or doing something? So you fix the fire escape last, or you fix the fire escape first based on OSHA? So you got this building that some guy just bought, he's coming down with all these perfect plans, he's going to be turning it into condos, and he's got this central stair, and he's got this fire escape on the back, and he's ready to start demo, and he needs the permits next week, and he's got this rotten fire escape on the back. What do you tell him? So let's say the fire escape is going to cost $100,000 to fix. We need to get acceptable temporary emergency repairs or scaffolding egress staircase put in there. So are you stopping this thing from moving forward? You say, hey, why don't you get a scaffolding company and put up a 10-story stair tower, tie it back into the building. Will that meet your satisfaction? Will that meet OSHA requirements so that the guys in there ripping out the building now can get in and out during an emergency? Have they met that 2 means of egress requirement? So now OSHA says, and again, we added this down here to this clarification. It's basically 1910.37 and 36. It says what? During repairs or alterations, employees, who are they really talking about now? The workers. The guys who are going to be ripping stuff out of the roof, ripping things inside, electricians putting in. What must you maintain first before you issue a permit? Or provide you something that's an alternative that says is equivalent to the level of safety. But who decides what's equivalent? So as they get on this building, they really have to meet with the building department and the fire department and come up with a plan that is either a scaffolding stair, or can they do an emergency repair to the fire escape system to make it functional while they're fixing it immediately. It's your call. It's your call as to what the severity of the fire escape is going to be. But now OSHA plays a game here, right? So if somebody's really being hard on you and not really dealing with a second means of egress, can you drag OSHA in? And when OSHA comes to talk to you, what do they usually bring? Their checkbook or your checkbook? Right? So again, the power that is out there in codes. This is what we're trying to avoid.
Flames coming out of the side of the building. Firefighters say it was one of the scarier moments, because when you pull up to a building and you see children and mothers hanging off the side of the fire escape, smoke swirling around them, they said that's scary, scary stuff. They got up there, they got the ladders up, and they said nobody got hurt.
The fire escape, there was 3 or 4 people hanging off the fire escape. They couldn't get off. They were just on the fire escapes. I had people hanging in their fire escapes at the rear of the building, and on this side of the building, we had a bunch of people on that fire escape.
About 50 people were displaced inside this building. Our firefighters say there's good news tonight. It looks like everybody will be allowed to go back in, except the one unit where the fire was in. They said that's good luck to them tonight. I'm Bob Wilson. On the scene of Bridgeport, News 8.
Bridgeport, Connecticut, 50 people. How many of you have trained your 8-year-old daughters to climb down ladders that don't come down and jump 10 feet to the ground? Because the fire escape ladders are inoperable, or the staircase won't come down. 50 people. So when these firemen showed up, was this a firefight or a fire rescue? So those 3, 5, 10, 15 minutes getting 50 people down from not some of the fire escapes, the guy said all the fire escapes on this complex, which had fire escapes in all 4 corners, holding hostage 50 people who were all freaking out. And they were lucky because it only burned one, right? Only burned one apartment. And then they were lucky too that the fire department let them all back into the building with all the fire escapes not working. Catch-22, right? Take a look at, do you guys remember the Station Night Fire?
Yep.
2003? We got a call from Channel 7 and saying, hey, we want to do a story on fire escapes and how people can use their fire escapes in case of fire. And we just want to do a 1-minute piece. So I trained one of the investigative reporters. She's about 4 feet and a half, nothing. She's a pit bull when she bites on something. And so we trained her on how to spot bad fire escape situations. And I gave her about a 15-minute training, brought her down to the Boston area, to the theater district. And after giving her training on what's the obvious to look for, we said, you know, let's go look at some fire escapes. She goes, show me some stuff. I said, no, just walk around anywhere you want and you tell me what passes, what fails. And what was supposed to be a 1-minute piece became this piece.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces, all in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him,
Oh, I'm scared to death.
but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
The man just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes, rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes. So then over here, for months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
Looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Right.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one, a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely going to put somebody either in the
It's
hospital.
my evil
or
twin
put
brother
somebody,
for sure.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. But our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files
But there's no fire escape certification.
I'm not in this spot.
to see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports.
There's no certification in this one either.
Right.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the Director of Inspectional Services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules.
And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe or not?
Well, I don't know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville, 4 more fire escapes,
The factory class. Yeah.
not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track.
How can they get away with that?
I guess the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made.
Would you talk to us on camera about this? No?
But when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said it's a cold day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified, and the official in charge would not come out to discuss it. In Boston, where there are more than 8,000 fire escapes, again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation, you don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn that Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue, and it should not be ignored.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress it enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Philippi Ryan.
So, right after that, what the city did to get on it right away, and you guys can write this down as an option, on all your permits, to close a permit now in Boston, what do you need? Certification on your fire escape. So if you're changing your toilet, or you're changing your electrical, or you're doing your roof, it doesn't matter. To close the permit, you need to have a current copy of your certification. So use an automatic trigger, make it a checklist item on closing permits. Or you make it a checklist item to open a permit, but you give them the permit, but you say, to close this permit, make sure I have a current certificate. For your fire departments, you basically make it when they do the smoke detector inspections. You make it a checklist item. You make them ask for a copy of the certificate. If it doesn't come with that, it's an incomplete. They still sign off the smoke, still allow the people to do whatever they have to do, but they have now triggered it and gone back to enforcement to say there is no certificate here. Health inspectors also have inspections that they do, and they need to add this to their checklist. Not only verify that there's alarms, there's this, there's that, no mold, just make a checklist item. The health inspector can ask for a copy of the certificate. He's not ordering one, he's just asking for a copy of one. If one doesn't come, it's a trigger back to enforcement to say this one is incomplete. Got it? So that's what they did here. And again, the main purpose is somebody's going to get hurt, and it's never the landlord. Not always the building inspector, but it's always a tenant and a fireman that's going to end up on the ground. Got it? Now, in the past 3 months, how many people have written one fire escape violation? Everybody look around. Now, there's a reason. I went to and I taught a class in Washington, D.C. I had a room this big with nothing but fire prevention. I asked the same question. In 1 year, they wrote. And one of the main reasons, they didn't know the code. They didn't know how to enforce it. They didn't know what kind of power they had. And that's just nationwide. Everybody doesn't understand how you can enforce it. So and a lot of them also are concerned, I don't want to put a little old lady out of the house. I don't want to put somebody in bankruptcy. I don't want, because these things occur. So we tell them, you need to have options for these people. So let's say somebody doesn't have $25,000 to fix that fire escape. Do they have $2,500 to make it functional until such time that permanent repairs can be ordered? Do they have $500 so that they can order scaffolding on their house and pay $500 a month for the next 3 to 6 months while you guys work out the financials with them so that they have temporary staircase that feeds windows so that they can put the fire escape off limits, but basically provide them with an alternative? So now the answer is not just ignore it because we don't know how to deal with it, right? And if you got a slumlord or somebody that does, wants to paint the fire escape themselves because you wrote a violation, what do you say? You say, yeah, go ahead and do it. I want a load test. And before it can be load tested, what's the guy need who fixed it himself? He needs an examination. By who? By a registered professional, who then says to you, are we ready to load test? What's he say? We're not. The guy just painted over all the crap. And the guy's right back where what? Where he started. Okay? And then that guy that has a $10,000 problem, a $5,000 problem, or a $50,000 problem, can you order temporary repairs or can you order scaffolding? Just to basically put the situation on hold for a minute. So it's never just you gotta fix it. Can we do alternatives to basically get them to a situation where people can start talking again? Let's take a look at some live load tests that didn't end so well. This is a building, a 5-story building over next to another 5-story building on a hill. So the 5-story on this one gets the 5th story gets to feed the rooftop of the other 5-story. And there's a deck on that building, there's no deck on this building, and the people on the 5th floor with a deck right across the way, what do you do in the middle of the night? You and your girlfriend, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you've been drinking and just came from partying. It's a nice sunny summer day. I mean, not sunny, but a nice warm sunny night. You go and hang on that deck, on your neighbor's deck. Phone rings, the girl says, "I'll get it," who doesn't really know the lay of the land, and does she fall because there's no railing there? 5 stories to her death? Yes. There's a fire escape that used to be here, and the guy was selling it. The homeowner basically fixed his own roof with his son, and basically put the fire escape back. And what happens with most mechanics and most carpenters have extra bolts and extra screws. Never needed them because, so when they were selling, there was 5 people on this fire escape. They only fell 12 feet to the roof line below. Had they fallen further, there'd be a lot of dead people. But they heard these people were the trustee, the seller, the buyer, the other agent, and one other person, and they all fell in this mangled heap. There was 3 fire escapes just like it. The guy I took the photograph of was ready to fall, and so was the other one. But this thing now is a quagmire of lawsuits. This is a case in Iowa that I'm an expert witness on. This is the screw we found in a field where they put the fire escape that fell to the ground. 3 kids were up there watching fireworks, and the fire escape, this used to be up there, hit the roof, hit the ground with 3 kids in it. That's all their blood and stuff like that, because when the carpenters were fixing the siding and they took out the through bolt, instead of putting the through bolt back, they put a latch screw back in the through bolt hole. This is the field that they threw it, which is about 8 blocks away, you know, fire escape CSI. And so we actually found the piece with the screw still in it. They put it back, and they not only put it back with a through bolt, they put a leg on it, which was not needed, and then the leg just rested on top of the shingles of the roof. And the corner there was no leg before in that corner, so it was an unsupported corner. That too was just onto the shingle. So a lot of times, you know, Mickey Mouse put it up the first time, Donald Duck finished it up. This is live load testing that happens every day. Now with a no smoking building, what happens, right? People have fire escapes that they basically watch parades on. So they're all watching parades on 75-year-old grandmas, right? And you've got remember the old days with no AC, everybody used to sleep on the fire escape? Firemen, a lot of times you've got people being evacuated through the fire escape because for some reason they can't go up the front way or whatever. That happens all the time. People are taking pictures with weddings. If you're a college town, guess what happens? Guess how you go upstairs? Let's find out who inspects fire escapes. All codes say registered professionals, and a lot of times it's the structural engineer. But any engineer can inspect the fire escape. That's what they say. They also say in some codes architects can inspect, but otherwise they say registered professional, and you must approve the architect if you want to have them. And by the way, the code says other satisfactory evidence of strength. So if you have a structural engineer on one hand that's been doing some buildings for you, and he goes out of his way to avoid load testing, and then you got this architect that comes in who's got 30 years experience in the city, and he keeps throwing his credentials in your face, and you're not satisfied with other evidence of strength. What do you throw at that 30-year architect that's put up a lot of buildings in your city? Just throw a load test at him. Why? Because has he given you other satisfactory evidence of strength? So the burden is to put on you, because what am I trying to avoid at all times? Because it's ugly and painful and heavy. They say the city officials inspect the fire escapes all the time. They said, the guy was just here last week and he didn't say anything about the fire escape. I said, no. City officials do not inspect your fire escape. They identify violations. They enforce violations, but they've never okayed your fire escape. They want you to get an independent person, a registered professional, to inspect your fire escape and provide a report back to them that it's either been load tested or they're providing back to that official other evidence of strength. How many people here have received an other evidence of strength report in the past 3 months? Oh, all right, you guys don't write fire escapes, so that's why you don't get it. How many have ever seen a load test in their career? How many have ever seen a satisfactory document like a reverse calculated load test? A good half-inch thick piece of paper on a fire escape. Now, I had a gentleman, I think Martin, mentioned something about, is it Martin? You mentioned about there was an ordinance in the area that says buildings in the area that they need to be load tested every 2 years or every 5.
No, it was just a building had a variance.
That's what it was, a variance so that they can keep it, but they have to load test it every so many years.
Yeah.
You know what the address is at, or what's that specific to?
I'm sorry.
He's asking what address is that?
Like 120 North Broad Street or something like that?
Okay, so I said, you know, that's interesting because that usually happens when you have historical buildings where they have to keep the fire escape because of a historical nature, and they have to block these windows with grates. You can still get the sun, but you can't ever physically get on them. The fire escape, a lot of times they remove a portion of the lower portion so that firemen can never get on them. And on all the platforms, the firemen are told, don't get on this thing because it's not structurally sound. But so those things sometimes happen. You get variations of things that people make up that sometimes it needs to be looked at. There is fire escape inspectors. I inspect all of Harvard University's fire escapes, and I'm not a structural engineer. I have a license out of Boston to inspect fire escapes. I also have a license out of California that's put out by the Reg 4, the fire prevention, and I inspect fire escape assemblies. There's only 2 licenses in the entire country. And you have to cross paths. You have to come into a city and say, hey, can I use my license? And a lot of times, a building inspector who says I'm not comfortable, or a fire marshal who's not comfortable says, can you get it just backed up by a structural engineer or an engineer's stamp on it? The answer is yes, it's easy. It's easy for me to find a local guy to stamp my document. And so I sometimes know more than he does about what he's, but it's in either case, there is fire escape inspectors out there. Let's take a look at the opinion versus load test. Now, here's what you're going to be getting, and this is why I say this is an opinion. Whenever you get a document from a structural engineer, they put on it, and we're going to show you a document that we have even on our certificates from Boston that the city says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in conformity with the building code today. What about tomorrow? Well, pay me tomorrow, I'll tell you the same thing. But today, I can tell you that it's not falling. Don't ask me tomorrow. Should it fall tomorrow, I wasn't here tomorrow. Call me back tomorrow. So that's called an opinion certification. And sometimes the wording gets in there, load testing. And we load tested your fire escape to the best of our information, knowledge and belief the fire escape is certifiable. They squeeze the word in there, but they've never physically done a load test. They're implying that their certification was the load test. It's almost like a reverse calculated load test, which it can happen. There's a live load test of physical sandbags on this, or I can do a test on a fire escape and say it has no rust in any of its connections, and I've recalculated out, like redrawing it, and I'm bringing it back to you, this information that says, I've done a calculated load test that says that if it were to be load tested, it would pass because not only does it have, the connections are all free of rust and internal rust, but I've done my calculations on my computer, it will hold 100 pounds per square foot. That's called a reverse calculated load test. And that usually spends, to do a reverse calculated load test in Pittsburgh that they want to do, they want $3,500 just to do a reverse, which is go out and measure. And these things can get kind of expensive, but is it really a live load test, or is it a reverse, is it just a document of calculations? Right? So the reverse calculated load test is very time consuming. So since you don't know what you're reading anyway when these engineers are sending to you, do they ever go through that extreme of the reverse calculated load test, or do they tell their clients they're doing a reverse calculated load test? They just basically, you know, do one of these opinion letters, and so in lieu of load testing for the past 25 to 50 years, you guys have been getting opinions. So with that being the case, is this fire escape pass or fail? Right? And here I am, I got called by the secretary who basically says, hey, we got a letter from an engineer, and, you know, and what that engineer said. This is the letter from the engineer. A one-pager. He says, fix a tread, fix a flat deck up bend, and paint it, and I'll certify it. And then he has his little disclaimer down here that says, to the best of my information, knowledge and belief. When we did it, we got all these photographs, and we condemned this fire escape that a policeman who was checking in on a break-in his foot went through it. That's what triggered the whole thing.
What's he still?
Well, on a lot of times they'll put their number, but
We don't accept that.
yeah. Well, let's start with or without a seal. Is it an opinion, or is it a load test, or is it even an exam? Okay. So this is in Fort Lee, New Jersey, right? Take a look at Chicago. There's another letter I got. And when I spoke with the management company, this is about 600 residents at this property, and there's about 10 of these fire escapes. And these fire escapes, instead of having the brackets below holding it, they have these brackets from above that come down and grab the nose. And so at the very nose, it has this nut that basically screws into a threaded rod that basically grabs the ends of these things. So, you know, all these ends go backwards. And I had to walk that so I could give them a bid on the job. And I said, "You sure the fire escape has been?" "Oh yeah, we got a letter." And they said, "Fix a couple of things, you know, spit paint at it and hide the rest with silicone." That's what they were telling me to do. They said some other things here, but it didn't mean anything. Because then I came back and I said, I've got photographs that show that the rods on the end are all rotted out, and this thing's gonna fall. "Oh, no, just do what the engineer says." So was this engineer doing a proper investigation? Because he used, to the best of my information, on his belief. But if he was using that confidence test that we have that says, is 100% of all the connections free of internal rust? Have you verified every connection on the supports and on the railings? So is that an opinion or a yes/no questionnaire that can get him in a lot of hot water and into court? So do you want opinions or do you want facts? Facts come from a confidence test. One didn't exist until 5 years ago when we made the first one out for Seattle, when 3 people fell from the 4th floor smoking on a fire escape that was screwed to the wood structure. So it's usually a fatality or a close fatality that brings things in. So this is a detention center for youth, 17 and younger. Looks good. So you get close and you look underneath, what happens? So if the incarceration doesn't kill you, getting out of the fire escape will. This is, because we're involved in a lot of cases, we have metallurgists that work with us. Just so you know, it takes 25 years under certain conditions, but general conditions, to grow 1/4 inch of rust. So if I got rust in the connection, it took me 25 years to grow that 1/4 inch. If I got 1/2 inch of rust, what's the average? 50. Now, sun, whatever side it's on, could accelerate or slow that down, but the average is, so now we got all this, what's that? How much rust is there now? When we go up a fire escape to do an inspection, what we're trying to show you guys are never going to walk on fire escapes again, because you'll be able to look up a fire escape and identify, if you see square head bolts, how old are they? 50 to 75 years old. If you see rivets, how old are those? They're 75 to 100 years old. Rivets came first, square bolts came second, and then you have hex head bolts. Got it? So if you look on the ground and you look up and you see square head bolts, when's the last time that thing was maintained? Not painted. Painted is that you must paint it at all times. When's the last time it was maintained as required by law? Because you put up a structure, when should I change these bolts out? 25 to 50 years. I have to swap out all the hardware. Keep the original metal, but swap out. So you're looking at a building that's already 50, 75 years old. So you're down on the ground, you look up, you see rivets and square head bolts. You have a violation? Can you load test it right away? Need an examination, right? They got evidence of rust in the connections. So that's the important part that's to note here. So when we go up these fire escapes, we bring a little 3-pound hammer, ping pong all the treads for our safety. That is not a load test. That is just a safety test. How many of you carry ping pong hammers as you go up these fire escapes? If you don't, this is why you shouldn't anymore. I think that's it. I'm not going up any further. That's why we have a hammer. And there are times we can actually stop the fire escape inspection because we can see enough.
You say something like this, right? So I look at this here, I would say this bolt here is original, and this was original, or these are all repairs.
Yeah, good point. Original hardware.
Original hardware.
Looks like somebody did a repair with a hex head bolt here. Did they ever remove the rust? Did they ever fix the steel? So Somebody did what's called a patch job. Worse than this is when somebody comes and welds it, leaves the rust, puts a piece of 1/2 inch round or 5 inch round in there, welds, it's called bridge welding. You weld to this steel, then you go across this, then you weld that and leave the rust in there. Rust keeps growing. Rust does what when it grows in 1 year? What does it do to a weld? Snaps it. We'll talk about a case. So every fire escape that have welded connections, if the welded connection visually appears good, I have to x-ray it or load test it, right? But as soon as I blow a bolt through it, I keep my weld, which is in good condition, no evidence of internal rust, and I blow a bolt to it. Do I have to x-ray it or load test it anymore? Because the bolt became the primary, brand new, and I've just avoided, I've given you other evidence of strength. So all your welded connections out of fire escape, basically as soon as we blow a hole through it and put a bolt on it, there is no load test. But if I come back and I've changed all the bolts, but all my welded connections, I mean my major weld connections, not my minors, little, add-ons or scroll work, I'm talking about major structural. If it doesn't have a bolt through the welded connection, what are you going to order on me? A load test or an x-ray, right? For the welds. Everything else gets load tested, right? So but as everybody can see on this piece, look at the original square head bolts there, all full of rust. Look at the rust inside. Square head bolts there. But this other side, the guy changed one of them, but kept the rust there. And this new bolt, what did that rust do to the shaft? It ate it up. Got it? So, and this is what happens when a lot of people, basically step on this thing. A lot of people don't realize that it's only a matter of time before this will naturally fall by itself. You don't even have to step on it anymore. You'll find these pieces in alleyways. They fall by themselves. Has everybody seen it? If anybody wants to see it again, we can pass it once more time through. Oh, actually, let's talk about, just make sure you know what the power you have. The International Fire Code says what? Depending upon structural condition, a load test shall be conducted. 9 out of 10 fire escapes that you're going to be looking at, load test is always what you're going to be forcing upon them. Do we want the load test though? Do you want to refurbish these things or load test them? Refurbish. Because the load test doesn't buy any paint. Spot repairing, if I had to spot repair a fire escape and load test it, it could be 15 grand, as an example. Refurbish the fire escape and give it a full paint job, silicone shut, every major connection is 12 grand, which is better for the client. Spending 10 and then 5 in load testing fees, or spending 12, get the whole thing refurbished. Now, 5 years later, I got the same exam on a fire escape that we refurbished 5 years ago. Can my engineer give you other evidence of strength for another 5 years? If the fire escape has been maintained and all the silicone shut connections are still good. So the average life of a refurbished fire escape is 15 to 25 years. Because in 25 years, what's wrong with the bolts again? They're old and they should be swapped out in 25 to 50. So on a general condition, and who decides? The authority having jurisdiction. So the second one, the NFPA says, the authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to approve any existing fire escape that has been shown by load testing. So in the NFPA, they want load test first, then you got other evidence of strength. Your building code, you guys pretty much use this code, 1028.6 or 1028.3? Does anybody know what code you guys are using? You guys go right to the fire code, right? Okay, I was told, because when you look at the code here, it says refer back to the fire code. So are you building code?
The answer is yes.
Both are going to be pushing it?
We're always most stringent.
So we bring it all three. So just so you know, the building code says you must examine it, so I want a report, I want to interface with somebody, and we're going to come up with a plan. And that plan is going to be spot repair and automatic what? And if you fully refurbish it, what do you do instead of a load test? What do you get? Certification. Who still signs it and seals it and gives you all the information you need? The engineer of record, right? So there's a whole new thing that happens there. Now, in case we have a financial situation, what are some of the options you have on a financial problem? Scaffold it temporarily for how long? As long as you'll allow. And that way you get a better sense of what's going on. And scaffolding is rented by the month, put up by a professional company with insurance. What are they going to put up? Mickey Mouse ladders, or are they going to put up code compliant stairs? How about that for your buildings now? You're issuing building permits, right? I'm about to gut my building and I have an outside fire escape. So what's your first conversation with these building contractors, these owners, these developers? What is OSHA demanding upon them? Not just for his guys, but when you show up at his site, what does OSHA demand that you have in case all hell breaks loose while you're at that site doing an inspection? Second means of egress that is what? Under repair or has been certified and load tested? If it hasn't been certified or load tested, what does he have to have temporarily? He has to have either scaffolding or he has to give you an equivalent safety plan. So there's a helicopter with the engines running all the time on top of these construction sites to evacuate everybody, just in case.
Now, if we're trying to give a TCO, we couldn't do it in this situation.
Can you just tell me what a TCO is? Occupancy permit?
Yeah.
It's different names for it. So what's it? Temporary occupancy.
Yeah.
So what?
Because you don't have a secondary egress.
So you don't ask me, I just brought
Well,
it.
this is, they're considering this as your secondary
Right.
egress. But it's not up to code,
Right.
under the standard or code.
Well, let's get the code part of it correct.
Okay.
If this was built in the 30s, I cannot upgrade this. I can only maintain it indefinitely, so there's no forced upgrade from 36 to 42s, 24s to 36s. You maintain the existing. You're saying has it been properly load tested or certified? Well, everybody waits, because this again is the bastard child of egress. You do it at the beginning or at the end. Right. It's like ugly relatives. When do you introduce your ugly relatives? At the beginning of the wedding or at the end of the wedding? Or after the wedding, I should say, right? So this should be done first, not last. But yes, you're about to jump into the situation and somebody says, you're about to close it all up and say, give me the certificate on your fire escape. They're like, what? And so now you need to make arrangements because you're about to shut down a financial situation. You got a lot, Ken. So you blindsided them. So what is your answer to them? Because the fire escape clearly needs 50 grand worth of work that they didn't anticipate.
They have to do something.
So can I put up temporary scaffolding in the meantime? Will that satisfy you and you'll still let my people in? Great, I'll work with you. Can I do emergency repairs to this fire escape? Make them functional, and a structural engineer is going to tell you that it is functional. And again, functional because it's already on the repair. Will that allow me?
Yeah.
So we have the answer. So
We don't regulate that, all construction sites.
we don't.
Perry, if it's a required, if it's a required means of egress, that's why we're here.
No, requires the key word.
Well, that's what I said.
Most of them have
Secondary.
2, 3,
Every building in the United States needs.
Two means of egress.
Well, I mean, if there's a dangerous, situation with a fire escape, there's 2 or 3 or 4 means of egress. We don't, that has no bearing on our CO.
You are correct when you've met all the requirements, but the only time a fire escape ever comes into play is when you got a kooky building with a central stair, and this is the only reason why 2 apartments on the left corner back can use it. So yes, because you've met if you got 10 apartments and 8 of them are satisfied with all these crazy stairways that you have internally, and then all of a sudden those 2 kooky ones, you shut them down, or you provide them with what? Alternative safety plan, right? Which says scaffolding with some stairs while you work on this thing. You just want to keep everybody in the same place. So if they don't have the money to fix it right away, all you do is, you tell the client you can put some temporary scaffolding. And is this you and your client talking, or is this you and the client's representative, the design professional, working with you on this proper safety plan? Because once you're dealing with a fire escape and it needs repairs, are you dealing strictly with the owner, or are you dealing with the owner's representative, the design professional? So the design professional is going to offer you 1 of 2 suggestions for that temporary situation. Emergency repairs that he's going to convince you will satisfy and the work is underway. Or he says, hey, this is a nightmare. We're going to put up some temporary scaffolding just to buy us 30 days so we can just take another look at this thing because we may find another way inside, and instead of spending money on this, let's look at alternatives of maybe getting a staircase inside at this time and getting rid of this thing outside.
We have a facade program, city ordinance facade inspections for second stories or more. I don't know if they reference fire escapes in that report.
Again, and again, right, well, anything attached to a facade, don't you guys have flagpoles and everything that must be coming to conformity? This is attached. Yeah, in New York, this is part of the facade, I mean, not New York, in Chicago, this is part of the facade inspection. In Jersey City, they have the green card inspection every 5 years. This is picked up at that time. Anything on the exterior must be compliant. So you guys may not have a code that says every 5 years, but there's always other codes. You have yearly inspections that will trigger these pickups. You have 5-year envelope inspections that will trigger up this thing. So the code is right here. Must examine, attest, or certify. The fact that this bastard child has been living under the crawl space, guess what happens? You've heard it there. You just chose to ignore it. There hasn't been. Who has wrote a fire escape violation in the past year in here? Nobody. Now I did a 9-story in Pittsburgh. A 9-story in Pittsburgh just these past couple of months, and it was the Heinz Museum. Just behind the Heinz Museum, they bought a building just behind to use it as storage, right across the alleyway, 30 feet across. And we basically refurbished a 9-story fire escape. And we have to move a section of it because they're building a bridge from their building over to the 4th floor so they can bring stuff back and forth that way, right? I offer the same class, right? So this is not just a Pennsylvania issue. This is, as the reports show, this is the bastard child of egress. Nobody cares about it. You know, and usually, as soon as there's a dead woman and a baby on the ground, with a crippled fireman, you know what you guys are going to get? You guys are going to get more attention than you deserve. All right, so we're going to take a short break in a minute. Let me just finish this code. The reason why you didn't write the violations is because you didn't know what code to cite. And you didn't know whether you had backup, whether the fire department was going to be up your butt, or if the building department was going to be, or NFPA, or now OSHA, right? Let's just throw OSHA into the mix. Does OSHA let you occupy any building?
OSHA has no jurisdiction.
I know, but I'm just using that as an example. Will OSHA let you occupy a building and keep people working in there that doesn't have a second means of egress?
Yes. They will refer it back to us. They will leave the onus on us.
Right, but I'm just saying that what we showed you at the beginning, it says that OSHA says you must maintain, because it could be fines and violations. What I'm trying to point out is that many people that all say the same thing. It's all about the safety, but like anything else, we have to get you guys to, when you look at a building, you are a pain in the tail in regards to smokes. You are a pain in the tails about alarms. You are a pain in the tails about exit signs. You are, all these. But then when it comes to the second means of egress, what's everybody do? Right? Low test here, low test here, low test here that you use in case what? Why do you pull that trump card called low test? Why do you pull it out? What has happened for you to get angry and start using that dirty word called low test? Somebody's giving you a hard time. Somebody doesn't want to use other evidence of strength. Because do you want the low test? Is that what you really want? Is that what you want to do? Low test all these 100-year-old fire escapes? I mean, you're not even talking about the brick that's tied into it. You load test it. The fire escape can hold. It just brings down the whole wall, right, on some of these buildings. But if somebody's giving you a hard time, does not respect the fact that you're supposed to be given other evidence of strength, do all 3 codes ask for other evidence of strength in lieu of a load test? So nothing has changed. We're not forcing load testing. We're just saying you keep original hardware. You keep one original hardware still on that fire escape because it's suspect. Because it's got rust in it or because of its age? Sometimes there's no rust in it. Sometimes you got a beautifully tight fire escape with a beautiful connection, nice and tight, and there is no rust there. But what's the only reason why I have to order a load test? Age. Simply age. So if you have a choice, you can keep the aged bolt, let's load test it or let's x-ray it, or how much does it cost to take that bolt out and put a brand new bolt in and avoid the load test? You want to spend dollars or pennies? So that's what we're here. So let's take a, you want to make a 5-minute or 10-minute break, Brett? We said 7.5 minutes. We said, it's on the side. If anybody has any questions, come up here. Let's get back around.